Here's what's coming up on today's show.
Boil it down to how are you going to get the income that you're missing, that you're leaving when you retire, and how are you going to guarantee that for as long as you live? From there, you can build on top of that retirement plan.
Welcome to the Income for Life Show. If you're looking for some common sense retirement planning ideas and want to hear how we make the complex financial world simple, then listen up so you can learn how you can stay retired. The Income for Life Show is powered by Folds of Honor, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to providing educational scholarships to the families of America's fallen and disabled service members. Now, here are your hosts, Matt Nelson and Nick Schilling.
Welcome to the Income for Life Show with your host, Matt and Nick, on what is becoming one of the coldest weeks of the year for sure. Thank you for listening to us here on incomeforlife.org or wherever you're listening today on any of our podcast affiliates, such as the Apples and the Spotifys, etc. And as we get going on our show here today, Nick, I wanted to first just make sure that you're okay with this weather that is happening right now. I think whenever we woke up this morning, it was negative 13 degrees outside.
It is what we call chilly, definitely.
It is a little chilly outside.
It is a little chilly outside. Hopefully everybody out there is staying warm. I know that us here in Kansas are far from the only ones across the country dealing with unusually cold weather going on. I'm from North Dakota, Minnesota.
This isn't bothering you a bit.
So this is a little bit of old hat.
Well, I'm a Kansas guy, so it gets plenty cold in Kansas. We have every single season at very distinct times of the year, so this is nothing new to us. Where you're from, up in Minnesota, nothing new for you, but those people in South Texas, whole different game.
Our listeners south of us and east of us that aren't used to this is changing the way that they look at weather and the way that they're living for the last about 5 days and going forward. So hopefully everybody's staying safe and staying warm.
Stay safe, everyone. Stay warm. This is going to go away. It's going to warm up here. I think next week is supposed to be in the 50s here. So I'm assuming in other places by the end of this week and in first of next week, things will start warming up a little bit. But in the meantime, just be careful, be safe, do all the smart things. But what we're going to be doing today, of course, we're going to be talking about our ideas on how you can stay retired. That's what we do here at Income for Life and on our show here at the Income for Life Show, powered by Folds of Honor. We can never say enough good things about that group at Folds of Honor. We love those guys to death and what they do for military families, and we're very happy that that team has joined us here at incomeforlife.org. And Nick, as we always talk about, we're always trying to figure out the common sense ways to educate our listeners and our clients and anybody in the country that is approaching the retirement world, if you would, on how to stay retired, but we try to do it in the most common sense way to make this as understandable as we can. And today's topics that we're going to be discussing, hopefully, we'll be able to do that, because we're going to talk about a common rule that a lot of people have heard called the Rule of 100.
Yep.
So we're going to go through the Rule of 100 today and the impact of it and how you and I feel it could benefit and maybe where it needs to be tweaked and adjusted a little bit. But then we're also going to discuss the three options for retirement planning. And I believe maybe in some of our past shows we've discussed this a little bit, but we're going to go through those three options that everybody has when it comes to retirement planning. It's not just one or the other. It's a combination of all three. So we're going to go through that as we go today here on the Income for Life Show. But first, let's also remind everybody that we have a really neat question that was emailed to us. We appreciate everybody from last week whenever we introduced our new Income for Life question, or our mailbag.
The mailbag, yeah.
The mailbag, the IFL mailbag. We had a really neat response to that, and we have a great question that we're going to be discussing here towards the end of the show that came into us from Atlanta. So whenever we get to that, I'm going to ask that question to you, Nick, and we're going to answer it live here on the air in the IFL mailbag, so be on the lookout for that as well. Look forward to it. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and jump into our first topic that we're going to be discussing, which is this thing that people call the Rule of 100.
Yeah.
In our best way to explain the Rule of 100, Nick, what I'd like for you to do is kind of from a 10,000-foot view.
Yeah.
Tell everybody what the Rule of 100 is and how it could apply to them.
Perfect. I like this topic, Matt, and I really like it because, one, I think a lot of listeners have maybe heard of this before. a lot of advisors have used this rule to help explain kind of that mix of investments that they should have and hold depending on their age. So many times, as an easy and simplified and now oversimplified way to understand what percentage of stocks versus what percentage of bonds somebody should hold. And it's kind of understood that as we age, we should maybe become more safe in our investing and have less risk in our portfolio. So advisors for years have utilized this rule of 100 to give us a rule of thumb as to, well, how should that mix look? How should we change as we age? And the rule of thumb simply states is you take 100 and you subtract your age. Your age is the amount of bonds that you should hold in your mix, your asset allocation.
Your safe money.
The way that it works. And many advisors use these terms like asset allocation to make it seem more highfalutin than it actually is. It's just your mix of stocks versus bonds, and your age is the amount of bonds that you should have. And the difference between 100 and your age is the amount of stocks, the equities that you should have in your portfolio.
So let's use an example of that real quick, Nick, so we can get everybody on the same page.
Yep. When you're young.
That is listening. So
yep.
If you start with the number 100,
yep.
and then you subtract your age out of it. So
when you're young and you're 30 years old,
you should have more risk and have the ability to be in the market a little bit more aggressively.
The rule of 100 will state that you should have 30%. Because I'm 30 years old. I'm not 30 years old, but if I was in this scenario.
We are not 30 years old.
Yeah. If I was in this scenario, I should have 30% of my money in bonds. And the difference between subtracting 100 and my age, the other 70% of my portfolio should be in stocks. I have more opportunity because of time to have risk.
Younger.
And time is on my side, so I can have more of my money at risk and in the market.
Because you're young enough to do it.
As I age and you get to 50 years old, the rule of thumb states that 50% of my money should be in bonds and 50% of my money, that difference should be in equities. As we creep more and more towards retirement, 65% of my money should be in bonds. 35% of my money should be in equities. Now that everybody kind of understands how that rule is calculated, as simple as it can be, but it's worked for some time. That's changing now, isn't it, Matt?
It is absolutely changing, and that's why we're going to be discussing this topic in a little bit more depth today, because the way of the rule of 100 in the past, and when I say in the past, maybe 15 years, 20 years ago, further, it could work that way. And the reason that it could work that way is because you could still get halfway decent rates and returns on that safe money, on that bond, or on that CD, or whatever it might be. Whatever mechanism you're using for that safe money was still getting a decent rate of return, and sadly, those days have pretty well gone away.
They definitely have, and one of the things with this topic is we know so many advisors are still using this as a rule of thumb, talking to clients about this, or tweaking it in a way that we completely disagree with, and we'll get into that when we start digging into this a little bit more. But I love the fact that we're bringing up this topic because the environment has changed so drastically that this rule is no longer valid. We have to look at other ways that we're going to solve this asset allocation, this mix of our portfolio when we're investing for the long term and in retirement in a completely different paradigm.
And let me ask you this, Nick, because this rule of 100 is a fascinating rule because it really allows people to put a number to their risk, right? So I get what they're trying to do. Okay, you got the rule of 100. You take the number 100. I'm 60 years old. Okay, 60-40, there's your split, right?
Yep.
So we know that the older you get, the less risky you should be. That's kind of the rule of 100.
Correct.
And that rule, that idea still applies. We're going to get into the tweaking of it here in a little bit, just due to that number of 100 that we'll talk about here in a minute. But the mindset of it, the methodology of the rule of 100 still makes sense, but how to accomplish the strategy inside that rule of 100 is what we're talking about is shifting.
Correct. We still need to have a certain mix of safe money versus money in the market. No matter what age you are, that mix has to be appropriate for your risk tolerance and how much time you have left. That's 100% all the time. We need to have that mix, and it needs to be appropriate for you. the execution of the rule of 100 has changed significantly. Unfortunately, many advisors are just changing the number. Instead of changing the rule of 100, they're changing it to 110 or 120. And the reason it is that's then asking for you to put more risk, more stuff in the market, because bonds aren't paying anything. As we've talked about, Matt, interest rates are way too low right now to make any of this stuff work the bank way or in investing in bonds in this way.
And I understand why.
Yes.
Some advisors will take that rule of 100 and go to like rule of 110 or rule of 120. I just don't agree with it.
Agree.
Because there's so many scenarios that can accomplish the goal of what you're trying to do, but keep the rule at 100. So the idea of the rule of 110, I mean, you could be optimistic on it, you could be pessimistic about it, whatever it might be, but trying to keep more money in the market at the time where you should not be market heavy just because interest rates on bonds are bad.
Correct.
Is not the way to go. What you need to do is, instead of having more money in the market, you need to look at a bond alternative.
We need to find other ways to guarantee that income and guarantee that safety that we're looking for those bonds to do. So we got to look at other avenues and other investment vehicles to try to accomplish that. What we preach here and what we counsel our clients on all the time is we don't want anybody taking undue risk, no matter what the investing environment is telling us. If rates are this low, just putting more into the market is, I'm not saying that can't give you returns that you're looking for, but you're then adding risk and you're adding volatility into your plan. And most of the people that we talk to, that's the last thing they want to do in their retirement is add risk into their portfolio. They want peace of mind.
And that's
they want
exactly
security.
Right. What they typically hear and what we hear from a majority of people that are reaching out to us about how to stay retired and how to properly manage this rule of 100 or some of these other things that maybe they've heard on television or on other shows or radio, whatever it might be in written literature, is, okay, I think I kind of got a pretty good grasp on some of this stuff, but my number one concern is retirement is making sure I don't outlive my nest egg. I cannot outlive my money. And ironically, there's articles all over. There's studies all over. Kiplinger just has one that just came out, how to address retirees' number one concern. And the number one concern is in retirement is outliving your money. Outliving your income. And that's even more frightening than death for majority of people out there.
It's the biggest transition that they're going to make. Having to replace that paycheck with Social Security plus your savings is a big leap. Now, we've talked about that transition mentally and emotionally as well as financially, but that is, of course, the number one concern. And the reason that Kiplinger is talking about it now is that concern is becoming more pressing because of the way the interest rate environment is.
It's almost magnified now.
It is so magnified. I love that word, Matt. It's magnified for the people that are trying to plan for retirement right now or are in retirement right now. It is almost an anti-saver environment. You can't just put your money in the bank and expect to have a rate of return that's going to do anything to keep up with inflation, let alone where bond prices are right now. Just the environment is against people that want to be safe. It's pushing you to put more money into the market, and we got to look at other alternatives to say you don't need to do that. It's not your only option.
And there are alternatives out there. And that's what so many people need to understand as they're listening today is some people can say, okay, Matt, okay, Nick, I've heard this before, but where else am I going to go? Where else can I go to get these things? And what we do is we just want you just to take a deep breath, step back, and look at retirement for the common sense way that we like to approach here on the Income for Life show, because we were talking about this before, Nick. If you have a nest egg, and it could be a combination of things, right? It could be that 401k. It could be your brokerage account. It could be your savings account, whatever. But you got a bucket of money that is earmarked for retirement purposes. And then you retire. What is it every 2 weeks that you're no longer receiving anymore?
I've lost my paycheck.
You're no longer receiving that paycheck. So now you maybe have Social Security, which is designed to do about 40 to 60% of your replacement of your income, give or take, depending on the number. And then you got this bucket of money. wouldn't it make sense, and we like to talk common sense here, there are options out there. There are products, there are services out there that are specifically designed to help you replace that paycheck and have it guaranteed for your entire life. Wouldn't it make sense to take a portion of that nest egg and replace that paycheck?
Correct.
That's what we do here at Income for Life, and that's one of the strategies that we will be discussing. And as we go today, what we're going to discuss are the 3 options that are available to you for retirement income purposes.
When we talk on this podcast, we talk about simplifying retirement. We talk about ways to make common sense decisions in your retirement planning. What we're trying to boil it down to is, what are the first principles? What are the true undividable principles that you're looking for in retirement planning? And we think the core of that is income. And we've talked about it all the time. The checkbooks, the calendars, and the clocks. That's what you got to.
3 C's.
You got to boil it down to, how are you going to get the income that you're missing, that you're leaving when you retire, and how are you going to guarantee that for as long as you live? From there, you can build on top of that retirement plan. But until you have that guaranteed, you don't really have a retirement plan. You might have an investment plan, and somebody can get overly sophisticated with what they tell you should do on your investment plan for
Which
retirement.
is also what we call here on the show a lot a hope-so plan.
Correct. That's exactly the difference between a hope-so
and a no-so
plan, as Matt said. What we want to do is break it down until we have those core principles taken care of. Your 3 C's are guaranteed. Then we can start to build sophistication into your plan. Then we can start to get as fun and as loose as we want to with your investing, but you have to have your guaranteed
Once
income.
you already have the 3 C's secure.
Correct.
And as we've discussed here a lot of times here on the Income for Life show, we call it locking in your lifestyle, right? You make sure that you have that guaranteed income for life established at the level and at the number that you're comfortable with.
Correct.
And then you could choose to do whatever you want to do with the investment side without the worry and fear that
Correct.
could come along with it if it was all in the investment side.
But the old rule of 100 right now, if you're 55 or 60, having 40 to 45% in equities and 55 to 60% in bonds with the rates that bonds are paying right now, or CDs are paying, any other safe investment vehicle that they're looking for, isn't going to make that math work. That's not going to guarantee enough income for you in most circumstances to live the way you need to live in your lifestyle and retirement.
And that's a great lead into our 3 options for retirement income that we're going to be discussing here. The 3 options for retirement income are very simple. Sadly, though, there's about 1 million different ways to design each one of these 3. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to get just to the core, just the common sense version of how you need to look at your retirement income planning. And there's only 3 ways. There's only 3 ways that you can go whenever you're looking at retirement income planning. So let's look at the first one. And the first one we call the bank's way. Very simple. The bank's way to retirement. How could you use the bank's way in today's economic environment when the bank's way rates are at an all-time low, Nick? Well, how would you do that?
When we start to think about these 3 ways of thinking of how you can plan for retirement, I think the bank way is the one that's hit most right now. With rates where they are, with the 10-year Treasury at just over 1% and a 30-year Treasury bond at about 2%. Think of investing your money for 30 years, 3 decades, and earning 2% a year.
2%. Let's stop right there for a minute, because that's baffling to a lot of people that might be listening, because we looked these numbers up.
Correct.
Right before we jumped on the show here. The current 30-year bond rate
U.S. Treasury bond. Yeah.
Was what?
Just over 2%, 2.085%.
2.085. So in order to actually get that rate, which is awful, by the way, 2.085, you have to hold that for 30 years.
The only way to guarantee that you're going to get that rate the entire time is to hold it to maturity, which is 30 years. Yes.
30 years.
Yep.
So anybody that's listening right now is probably saying, my God, why would anybody do that?
Why would you commit to 2% income for 30 years when you have to guarantee it that long. That's not a livable rate.
Not even close, because what is the current inflation rate?
Depending on how you calculate it, the inflation rate is anywhere between 3 to 4% right now. So you're losing 1 to 2% every year just on inflation, even committing to a 30-year interest rate, let alone a 2 or 5 year CD, which is paying less than 1 or 1% right now.
There's an interesting term that you and I talk about on that topic right there. We call that losing your money safely.
Correct.
Because you're not even keeping up with inflation. Okay, you got this 2%, for example. You got to take it to maturity, whatever it might be. Rates are at an all-time low with the treasuries, et cetera. And those rates are not even keeping up with the current inflation rate. So you're actually, some people even call that a moonwalk, Michael Jackson moonwalk account, where you think you're walking forward, but you're actually going backwards.
Correct.
And so we call that bank's way, losing your money safely. So it's just not a proper way to go about in today's world.
You're going to get statements every month and every quarter from the bank, and that same $100,000 or $500,000 that you have in there isn't going to go down. It's going to be going up very incrementally, but you're losing purchasing power and buying power every month and year that you have it in there to the inflation rate. You're not even keeping up with inflation, and committing that amount of money to a safe way of losing it isn't going to work for an overall retirement plan, not an income replacement plan that we need to have to guarantee your lifestyle.
And you're the one that is then responsible for if there's any volatilities or whatever it might be. You're the one that has to deal with that. So the stress that goes along with the bank's way is on you.
The bank's way used to work.
It absolutely used to work.
When rates were normal and you're earning 5, 6, 7, 8, 9% or more, depending on the late 70s and 80s, significantly more than that, but you're also borrowing at higher rates. But when rates are normalized, the bank way can work for some people that want to be able to do it. With rates the way they are right now, it's not a feasible way for most people, and we got to look at alternatives. What's the next theory that people talk about?
The next one is a very common one right now, Nick, and it is the Wall Street way to retirement. This is where we just talked about earlier in the show that seems like a lot of people feel like they're getting pushed into.
Correct.
That's the only place I can go, Matt, to get a decent rate of return to be able to pacify my retirement to do what I want to do. I have to go there because there's no other option.
Most people are observant enough and realize where rates are. They keep track of what banks are paying, and they understand that stuff. So when they look at the bank rates, they know that that's not a usable rate of interest for me to actually keep up with what I need to do. So then they go to their agent or their advisor or their friend, and they say, where do you have your money? And they get pushed more and more to riskier and riskier investments to try to chase a return to keep up with or beat inflation. Hence, most advisors that aren't talking the way that we are changing that rule of 100 to a rule of 110 or 120 or 130. They are increasing the amount that you have in the market, the amount that you have at risk, the amount that you have in volatility, so that you can try to keep up with the pace of inflation and keep your retirement plan feasible, but they haven't guaranteed anything.
That's the scary part right there, is right there at the very end, and you hit it. They haven't guaranteed anything. It is all at risk. It is subject to the volatilities of the ups and downs. And what we have learned over the past 6 to 18 months is volatility can be aggressive, very, very aggressive. And if you're that 30-year-old, like we were talking about a little bit ago, you can absorb that and you can be fine with a lot of that.
Time is on your side.
But now, if you are 50, 55, 60 years old, time is no longer on your side. So if that volatility happens to you now and you have a majority or all, some people, of your retirement nest egg in the market, aka in that volatility, you really could be destroyed. It could happen.
And when you look at it, it's just, are you comfortable with the way that your current portfolio is set up? Because right now the market's at all-time highs. Kind of hovering back and forth day in and day out. Sometimes it's a little low, sometimes it goes back up. But we're at all-time highs compared to where they were in most of the market indices. Looking at this and saying, how comfortable am I going forward when the market is no longer looking ahead to the next stimulus package from the government, Once that gets enacted and people get the checks that they so greatly need, once it's looking forward and we got to start to work the market in a normal market functioning fashion. It's no longer relying on the government to invoke stimulus, to input stimulus into this thing. What's the market going to do? Is it going to start to add some realism into this and come back down? Do we need to start looking at having more risk when markets are at all-time highs is maybe not the best scenario for most people as they're inching closer and closer to retirement. We got to start looking at other options.
And most people absolutely understand that, I feel like, at least the ones that we are talking to, a majority
they just don't know what to do.
They just don't know what to do. So they're in the mindset of, Matt, Nick, I get it. I understand. I understand the risk, but where else am I going to go? What else can I do? And that's going to lead us right into the third way. The third option that is becoming more and more and more popular, especially over the past decade or so, is the insurance way to retirement.
As rates have gradually come down over the last, about a decade, Matt, they've kind of been creeping lower and lower for the past 10 years. As rates have come down, they've had to find different ways to guarantee that income, have safety in their portfolio, take risk off the table, but still guarantee that lifetime income and lifestyle that they've looked for. The insurance way is almost the only way that you can tackle that, and it's one of our favorite ways to solidify the 3 C's.
And the neat part about the insurance way is that this concept of the insurance way is not new. This way has been around for decades and decades and decades, and you see it all the time because we talk about it with a lot of our clients that get a hold of us, or anybody that's listening to our show. They're always like, well, Matt, that sounds, great. I've never heard of that. I don't even know what you're talking about. How come I've never heard of it? And our answer to all of those people every time is, oh, you absolutely have heard about it. You just never really got properly introduced to it. And here's some examples of how I know every single person has heard about this insurance strategy. Nationwide commercials with Peyton Manning and the little Nationwide jingle. You've seen it on television all the time. Another one that is very popular is Pacific Life with that whale that jumping out of the ocean, jumping out of the water. You see commercials for New York Life. You see Voya, which used to be, I believe, ING.
Yeah.
Voya with those little money bunnies, little rabbits like the green and the orange Voya bunnies. You see this stuff everywhere.
Most of the commercials that you see talking about retirement planning are talking about the insurance way of retirement planning. You got the commercials that are talking about trading, E-Trade.
Oh, those are everywhere too.
Those are kind of the funny ones of giving you all the TD Ameritrade, giving you all the information to manage your own retirement. But most of the commercials, the ones that you've seen for decades, are the ones that are talking about retirement planning and retirement planning using the insurance way of thinking.
And you see them everywhere.
Yeah.
Super Bowl, any big event on television, whatever it might be, you see these commercials all the time. And the John Hancocks, the Lincoln Financials, the Voyas, all of them. So if you're listening right now and you're like, well, yeah, I saw those.
Correct.
Yeah, I hear those. Yeah, I see those. That's the insurance way. And the insurance way is used to doing these guaranteed lifetime income sort of strategies because they've been doing them for decades.
I think you hit it right on the head, Matt. So if we talk about the insurance way and we implement in a lot of plans the insurance way of going about this, our listeners are probably asking, well, why is that any better, worse, different than the other two, the bank way or the Wall Street way? And we look at it because insurance companies are designed to help take risk off the table and manage either life insurance, manage for a life insurance plan, or annuities where you're guaranteeing and ensuring retirement income. This is what they're designed to do.
And every insurance company on any line of insurance is all built the same way. I don't care what the insurance is. It could be property insurance. It could be crop insurance. It could be auto. It could, whatever it might be, pet insurance,
Yep.
Whatever insurance you have, they are all designed to do the same thing, which is help you with a potential financial risk. That's what they do.
Yep.
So perfect example, you go on vacation, you come back, your house burned to the ground. Okay, Well, your homeowner's insurance representative is not going to show up with hammers and nails. They're going to show up with a check.
Correct.
And they will help you offset that financial risk. So that is the insurance way. So we tell people all the time, nobody wants to pay for insurance. Nick, you don't. I don't. Nobody wants to pay for insurance, but everybody loves what insurance does.
Correct.
And the insurance way for retirement is no different than that.
Insurance is a way to optimize the cost structure of how you're going to overcome unforeseen circumstances.
That's it.
Because they're insuring large swaths and huge numbers of people, they're able to find an optimal way to give everybody a guaranteed and safe way to either insure their home, their automobile, or whatever. In what we're talking about, it's a retirement income insurance. We're talking about guaranteeing your lifestyle for the rest of your life and turning the management of those bonds, of that fixed income, of that portion that you need to turn into guaranteed income over to an insurance company and let them manage the risk because they're optimized to do so.
And you see this all the time. If you are in a position where you're one of the lucky ones that has a traditional corporate pension plan, you know this way. This way we're talking about is no different. A lot of people even say, okay, are you taking Social Security? Yes. Social Security is a very similar way. It's a guaranteed income for the rest of your life. So as we talk about a lot of times here on the show, Nick, when we're talking about the 3 C's, what's wrong with having more of that? What is wrong with having more of a guaranteed lifetime income addition into your retirement portfolio? There's so many people that call us and say, well, man, I didn't even know that was out there. I really didn't even know that we could do that. And our answer to that is you did know, correct. You just didn't know how to implement it.
And the corporate pension is something everybody wishes that they had in their retirement plan. Unfortunately, they're becoming fewer and farther between of the people that we find that actually have that, especially when you're not in a government-facilitated job.
That's where most of those pensions are living now.
Are still available. When you get out into the corporate world, they're putting the onus of that retirement risk and that planning risk on you. So
also known as the 401k, traditionally.
The traditional 401k, and on other shows we've talked about it. But you're very used to the concept, and you want the goods that it does, the concept of a pension plan. That's an annuity. In many circumstances, the corporate pension plan acts exactly like an insurance company is acting with an annuity. It is the exact same thing. They're looking at the user base of their employees and using actuarial science to find out how much they can pay out and guaranteeing that for your lifetime once you retire. That's the exact thing an insurance company does.
And if you know anyone out there that does own a pension, if you are driving down the road or you're listening here on the Income for Life show on incomeforlife.org, and you're thinking, well, yeah, my neighbor across the street has a pension. They understand what you and I are talking about right now, Nick, because they have that guaranteed income coming in for them right now. And those people are happy people. They are happy people.
In most circumstances, if you look at that neighbor's probably relaxed, has a great time in retirement, and does what they want to do when they want to do it because they know their income is guaranteed.
And the reason I'm bringing up that example is because that's my neighbor.
Yeah.
Directly across the street from where I live, I have a neighbor that has been retired for as long as I've lived in my house of over 20 years.
Yeah.
And he is just loving life. So if you're listening and you're like, man, I'd like to have that, if there's a way that I can do this, and if you want to learn more about that, all you have to do is give us a call, right, Nick? Just give us a call at 888-228-8814. Just ask for one of us. We can schedule a time to visit with you over the phone. We do not have to meet you face-to-face. We have listeners all over the country, so we're not going to be able to visit with everyone face-to-face anyway. But we have a way to explain this to you in a way that's going to make sense to
Correct.
You. And that's the idea.
And it is. And it's finding the best way. Even of these 3 ways, we're generalizing. It's finding the best way to accomplish what you need and what your family's needs and goals and objectives are. And in lots of times, the insurance way, because of where rates are, is one of the only ways to be able to do that. But we can optimize your way of getting your needs and goals accomplished just by giving us a call.
You've got mail.
Well, we hope that helped everybody out today a little bit. And now what we are going to do, like we do typically towards the end of our shows here moving forward, is we're going to jump into our mailbag.
I like this segment.
And the new IFL mailbag is, if you were listening to our last show, is a new segment that we added in here on the Income for Life show, where we take a question from our listeners that they email to us to info@incomeforlife.org and ask us a question. And what we do is we pull one of those questions out of that mailbag of some of the ones that we feel a lot of people may have the same type of a question.
Love it. And thank you to all the people that offered questions and asked questions. Hopefully we're getting back to you directly if we didn't choose you as the one that we're going to talk about on the air. But thank you so much for giving us us your question.
Bet. And if you do have a question out there and you do want to submit it to us and have Nick and I discuss that question here on the air at Income for Life, then simply email it to us to info@incomeforlife.org, and we'll do our best to try to either get back to you personally.
Correct.
Or we'll try to answer it on the show.
No matter what, we will get back to you about your question. If we talk about it on air, we've already talked to you about the question. You're not hearing it the first time on here.
Absolutely.
But so if you email us at info@incomeforlife.org, we will get back to you, answer your questions, and have a conversation.
And this question of the day today, Nick, is from Barrett in Atlanta. Okay, Barrett in Atlanta had a great question, and I think this question applies to so many people right now, which is one of the reasons we picked this, because it's all across the country. Barrett said, "I'm worried about what 2021 will bring after how crazy 2020 was. Is there a way I can stay out of the craziness of the market and still get prepared for retirement?" First of all, Barrett, thank you for sending us that at info@incomeforlife.org. And that is a question, Nick, that so many people out there are having right now, left and right.
We get the question a ton, and the reason that we chose it is we know that it's weighing on people's minds right now. And I think everybody, even though they don't know what to ask or maybe it's tough to articulate, they know that we're not out of the woods yet. We're not completely, the pandemic's still going on. We're starting to get back. Businesses are opening up, which is fantastic, but we're still relying on kind of government stimulus to make this machine work, to grease the wheels of this overall global economic system. So we're far from out of the woods. And Barrett asking this question, we thought applied to about everybody that's listening. So I think it's a really good one. And Barrett, hopefully you're staying warm there in Atlanta.
Yeah, I wonder what the temp is in Atlanta.
I think it's colder than it typically is in Atlanta, we'll say. But hopefully Barrett's staying warm.
Yeah, hopefully he is staying warm. But Barrett, you're exactly right. I mean, 2021 is going to be what everybody's assuming very hectic. It's going to be very stressful.
Yep.
2020 brought on things that we never thought we'd be experiencing here in the United States with the virus and the stimulus packages that followed it, on top of the new administration changes that were coming. There's just been a lot of things that happened in 2020 that are still bringing into the forefront of 2021. So, Barrett, your question is 100% valid. And when your question is there a way that I can stay out of the craziness of the market and get prepared for retirement? Absolutely, you can.
Correct. And the way that we talk about this and the way that we look at it for Barrett and any of our other listeners, it kind of depends on what your goals are and your age. So depending on how old Barrett is and anybody else that's listening, there's different ways that you can start to look at how you're chopping up the investment pie. Rule of 100 or 110 or 120. How are you allocating your investments for the long term? Again, the difference between trading with the GameStop that we talked about a little bit before or long-term investing. How are you allocating your long-term investments to optimize your needs and goals? So if you're younger, time is on your side. You could maybe allocate some of it away from equities and into more fixed income options that are out there if you want to stabilize that. But if you're getting closer to retirement, if you're in retirement planning, which Barrett's talking about here, that's where we got to start to look at where your money's saved, what investment vehicles it's in right now, what tax shelters it's in, 401ks, IRAs, Roth IRAs, non-qualified joint accounts. Where is it held? How are you invested right now? And what can we do to make that overall pie, that overall portfolio accomplish your goals, not just for 2021, but setting it up in 2021 to get through 2021 and beyond.
And then into 2031, and then on forward, and on and on and
exactly
on.
it.
So Barrett's question, of course, that's going to be a majority of people out there that are probably listening. They're going to have that exact same question, and it's right on their mind now because it is so crazy right now. But there are ways, and everybody's different. Nick, you and I talk about all the time. Barrett's way may not be the way for somebody else, right?
Correct.
Everybody's going to be a little bit different. The easiest way, give us a call. 888-228-8814. Get on the phone with either Nick and I. We'll discuss your scenario
Correct.
to see what we can do on our ideas and our thoughts of being able to help you stay retired in this hectic 2021 year.
Barrett is exactly right. Getting out of the hectic nature of this is what everybody needs to do. How you do it is what we're going to discuss with you personally and any other listener, but there are strategies and tactics to use for Barrett and anybody else to get you out of the hustle and bustle and volatility of this and to have a more calm view of 2021 and beyond.
Great question that you submitted to us, Barrett. We appreciate it very much. And if you're listening today and you have a question for us here at Income for Life and on the Income for Life show, powered by Folds of Honor, of course, you can email that to us to info@incomeforlife.org, and we will absolutely get back to you. And if it's a question that we feel could fit with a lot of people across the country, we may even discuss your question on the show like we did today with Barrett.
Thank you so much.
Barrett, you did great. Thank you very much. And as we wrap up today's show here on incomeforlife.org, we want to wrap up today's show in a little bit more bummer way here in the Midwest because a couple Sundays ago, our Kansas City Chiefs kind of took it on the chin.
They did, and let's just say our guesses of how the game was going to go,
That didn't work.
that didn't play out. So
Mine was crushed.
Yeah,
Mine was bad.
You were way off in that. You were way off. I was still wrong, and wrong is wrong. So we just hope that, one, congratulations to Tampa Bay and Tom Brady.
I can't say that.
That is pretty ridiculous what they're doing. We got a lot of years ahead of us. Nothing's guaranteed, but we're looking forward to the future.
True. It was still a great game. Our obviously future Hall of Famer, MVP, Mr. Patrick Mahomes, was running for his life the entire game. And Nick, I saw a stat, and we'll end our show with this, but I saw that Mr. Mahomes ran 497 yards behind the line of scrimmage during that game. Tom Brady ran 36.
Well, Tom Brady's 43 years old. Hopefully he's
not running very much at all.
Exactly. You don't want to hurt them hips and knees.
So needless to say, we had some offensive line issues, and that's okay. But we will get that
it's the ultimate
up.
team game. Yep.
We will get that cleaned up. But in the meantime, we're still going to always invite Mr. Patrick Mahomes on the Income for Life show. But he's recovering on his from his toe surgery, so we got to give him a break this week.
Wish him the best. Hopefully he gets well soon, gets back at it. And while he's laid up and recovering, if he ever wants to join us, the invitation is out there.
What else has he got to do, right? Might as well come on here and we can talk to him about his ideas of retirement planning and see how they differ between hours.
Or we can just talk football.
Football for an hour.
Exactly.
But thank you very much, everyone, for listening today on the Income for Life show with your hosts, Matt and Nick, powered by Folds of Honor. We appreciate you very much for tuning in today. If you have any questions about our topics today and want to learn a little bit more about who we are and what we do, give us a call at 888-228-8814. Again, 888-228-8814. And again, thank you very much to our partners at Folds of Honor. We appreciate you guys sponsoring and powering the Income for Life show. Thank you very much. And until next time, bye-bye for now.
Stay warm. Be safe.
Thanks for listening to the Income for Life show. If you have any questions about something we talked about today or want to get in touch with the Income for Life team, give us a call to 888-228-8814. That's 888-228-8814. You can also go online to incomeforlife.org and check the description of today's show for any relevant resources and contact information. You can also find the podcast on all major podcasting apps, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and many more locations. The Income for Life show is powered by Folds of Honor, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to providing educational scholarships to the families of America's fallen and disabled service members. For more information, visit foldsofhonor.org. Information provided on today's show is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment, tax, or legal advice. Information is obtained from sources that are deemed to be reliable, but their accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed. Always consult with a qualified professional before taking any action.